And welcome to week 7 of Capital Outlook here in Cheyenne. Again, thank you very much for joining us. Special guest, Senator Bill Landen, chairman of the Senate Corporations Committee, is with us as we begin our show tonight to talk about a very important bill that came before your committee yesterday. And I'm talking about House Bill 220, the National Retail Fairness Act. It had a lot of support early on in the House. It passed through committee, it passed the House. It came to your committee, and my goodness, has the tide changed?
Well, I reflecting, it's a lot of work that goes into an effort like that. And I really want to tip my hat to Representative Obermuller, who led the effort to take a look at how could we maybe take a look at corporate taxation in Wyoming. We've all talked about broadening the tax structure, and that was a bill that potentially could have done that.
But about $45 million in the bill was targeted for education, and now that money's gone. A lot of out-of-state influence came your way and members of the committee's way. How did that impact you with this bill?
Well, I think it's bound to impact. We had over 4 hours of testimony on the Senate side. That included, obviously, out-of-state attorneys and out-of-state interested folks, but it also included a lot of folks from in Wyoming. Some of the things that I think led to senators losing some of their desire to support the bill included the fact that it was going to take a lot of money to gear up in order to even collect the tax. So there was a high front end cost on that taxation piece. Which
would have been a one-time expense, though.
Right? One time. One senator said, well, that makes it a lot easier to add anything to it later. And so there's always trepidation. We've talked about broadening that tax base before. And I think everybody's for that, but just about everybody said, don't broaden it in my backyard.
And you expressed that frustration yesterday to the point of you're asking constituents to say, okay, what do you want me to cut now?
Yeah, I spent the past 2 years, as you know, on our Appropriations Committee and going line by line through a budget for 2 years. We have cut public employees down to about 2003 levels. We have trimmed budgets. Agencies are tight. Schools, sure, we can maybe draw that in a little bit tighter. But the fact is, we have cut state government in most cases between 10 and 20% over the last 3 or 4 years. So, the old rhetoric of we've got a spending problem, not so much anymore. And we still have a structural deficit. So. A little bit of frustration in the fact that that was a pretty good opportunity for us to broaden the tax structure. We just didn't have enough support in the Senate.
You made a decision to not have a committee vote on this bill. Walk me through that thought process.
Well, we spent over the weekend. We actually took testimony last week and spent 4 days over the weekend, brought it back on Tuesday to give our leadership time to really visit with fellow senators. By the time it came to Tuesday afternoon, we knew where the votes were, and we simply didn't have the numbers. And so I didn't want to waste any more time or put the committee in the spot of sending it out to the floor so that it would simply die on committee of the whole. So we just didn't take a vote.
You going to advocate that this bill deserves to be really looked at again hard in the interim?
I think it really does. I think there's opportunity for us to drill down in a couple of spots where there was some concern. One of the concerns was that it would treat like businesses right across the street from each other differently. And I think that's a spot that we can take a look at. I like the fact that it tries to target some of those out-of-state corporations instead of targeting our Main Street business. If we could still accomplish that and work this through the interim and come up with an even better effort, I think it's worthwhile.
On quick notice, Senator Landen, we appreciate your joining us this morning. Maybe one of the most important topics that have come before the legislature, certainly on the revenue side this session.
I think it's a big one, and I can speak for everyone in the legislature, we're going to keep working on this structural deficit. I know there's always room for us to tighten up a little bit, but I think this conversation about revenue is going to continue.
It's a tall mountain in this legislature, as you well know, and that needle hasn't moved much.
No, that's true. That's true.
Again, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.